Let's see how well all of you know your history. If I ask you, who founded the Dutch Empire? The answer is Willem d'Oranje. Did I get that right? If I ask you, who led the American patriots in the War of Independence? George Washington. And who led the British out of the European Union in 2021? You don't need to answer that one. But let's say I ask, what was the name of the leader who took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim? You'll all jump out your seats and say, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe. Have a look at the narrative in the Torah as the Torah describes it. It's so fascinating and unusual the way the Torah shows us what really was going on and who really was pulling the strings. Let's start with a recap of last week's Sedra. Moshe Rabbeinu grows up in the house of Paroi. The first thing we encounter on his heroic mission is the way in which he goes out of Paro's house, sees his brothers suffering in a field, and witnesses an Egyptian man hitting a Jewish man. You would think that this is going to be the beginning of a revolution, but it's not. Within a few short days, Moshe Rabbeinu is forced to run away, to flee to Midian and stay there for many years away from Paro, away from harm. Years later, Hashem comes to him and gives him his mission. You're going to go and save the Jewish people. But Moshe says, I'm not fit for this mission. I can't speak well, I'm not an orator, Paro will laugh at me. Hashem says go, so Moshe goes. He comes in front of Paro and presents himself with his demand, Paro, release the Jewish people from Egypt. But Paro takes no notice. He laughs at Moshe. He mocks him. He says, why are you wasting people's time with these stupid words? Go from here. Not only that, but even the Jewish people who had such a hope when Moshe Rabbeinu returned to Mitzrayim, when Moshe returns to Egypt, immediately lose hope. They come to Moshe at the end of last week's Sedra and they complain. You're embarrassing us. You're making life more difficult for us. And Moshe turns to Hashem and he says, I am not cut out for the job. Now note the way in which the Torah splits the events of last week's Sedra with the events of this week's Sedra. The very last posuk in last week's Sedra tells us that Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, don't worry, now you will see that Paro will release the Jewish people only through my strong hand. Immediately, one posuk later, although we only read it a whole week later, the Torah starts off again, Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he tells him, I am Hashem, and I am going to take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. Why this immediate repetition? We just said, Hashem spoke to Moshe and he said he's going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. The answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is letting us know who's in control, who's in charge. Not heroes, not war generals, and not supermen. And that's the message that the Torah tells us, unlike any other narrative. It's Hashem who lowers the haughty, who lifts up the downtrodden, and releases those who are prisoned.